And welcome back to the Touchline Talk Show. Like I said, we're going to go through part of the all important team, the starting lineup for the Premier League this season. The goal here, and why I love this concept, is this is not about the best. This is the most indispensable, most valuable, whatever words you want to use. It's putting the V back in MVP. That's kind of how I like to describe it. These are the guys that you look back on and you go, I don't know where their team would have been without them. Which inherently means players from clubs like Liverpool and Manchester City are at a massive disadvantage. Because, where would Manchester City be without Gabriel Jesus? Well, he's probably going to leave and they're going to be just fine. What would Alisson look like without Virgil Van Dyke? And so, certainly these teams are well represented on this list. But that is, again, this is not about best 11. This is not about players of the year. This is about the players that are so important to their teams. And you look back on their team season, you go, they wouldn't have got there without this player. And then there are also some superstars who are just so great and so important that they made this team anyway because, well, they're some of the best players in the world. So we start with our goalkeeper, Jose Sa. Maybe not the name you expected. And this is one of those examples of go look at the numbers from a what he was asked to do standpoint. Nobody came close. 8 goalies in the Premier League faced at least 150 shots on target this season. 7 of those goalies allowed at least 1.3 goals per 90 minutes. The other one was Sa. He allowed 1.10. Also led the league in save percentage. You can go down the list. Go to the more advanced metrics. He was an absolute difference maker. And again, this comes back to the, okay, what happens if you put Wolves defense or the Wolves team in front of Ederson or Alisson? If I'm picking a goalie, I want those two guys before Sa. But neither of them were more important to their team, and especially from a shot-stopping, traditional goalkeeping standpoint. Because there's no way to quantify Ederson's ability to just drill a ball on a dime 50 yards. That is important to what Pep does. But ultimately, I'm not going to overthink that part of it, lean too much on that part of it. He was one of the most tested goalkeepers in the league, and he fared significantly better than the other ones who were up there in terms of the amount of shots faced and the shots on target. We're just going to leave it right there. Absolutely deserving of his spot. Left back. And here we go into the Manchester City Liverpool portion. It's João Cancelo. He had the most completed passes in the league. He had the second most progressive passes, 274. And it just so happens he's the best player in the world at his position. But again, that's not why he's on this team. As I talked about during the Champions League, as good of a player as Alexander Zinchenko is, and he's a very good one, Cancelo just brings you something completely different with his playmaking ability. They don't have another outside back like him. The only one who's close in the Premier League is Andy Robertson. But Cancelo is much more solid defensively. I believe he was also top 10 in the league in tackles. He is the complete package in a way that neither of Liverpool's are. And the bonus points come when you talk about the role he plays in Pep's system. The fact he is the initiator of most of them, at least some of their offense, what those outside backs are asked to do for Pep, and he's just absolutely excellent. Didn't have to think hard about that one at all. Joining him on his side of the field as the center back, Virgil Van Dyke. Let's just go through the last 4 seasons for Liverpool. Lose out to City by a point. have one of the best years in Premier League history. Win the title. Van Dyke gets hurt and they finish with 69 points. Nearly win the quadruple and finish a point behind City again. That's really that's all we need here. He is one of the most valuable players in the Premier League, period. His ability to cut out trouble, reduce the amount of traffic Alisson sees, his presence in the box, his passing ability. We're not going to overthink this. He is arguably the most valuable player Liverpool has. And the same goes on the other side for Reuben Diaz. Similar idea, these two guys are just so head and shoulders above the rest of the center backs in the Premier League. And Diaz was in the 99th percentile among center backs in progressive carrying distance, top 5 league center backs. So the best players in Europe. And he's way up there in the top percentiles of many important progressive, ball carrying passing statistics. And of course, he's also just a terrific pure defender. Not gonna make it harder than it has to be. They are the best two center backs, the two most valuable center backs, the two most important ones, and on we go. And right back, Trent Alexander-Arnold. He had the most expected assists in the league. Only Mo Salah actually had more. He is one of the best passers in the league, if not the best. And the reason that this might have been the singular easiest decision to make is that for all of Liverpool's depth, they do not have a suitable replacement for him. Now, by suitable, I mean somebody you can put into the starting lineup and not feel like there's a drop-off or that you're trying to plug a hole. Because James Milner and Joe Gomez are plugging holes. They're very good players. James Milner's had a terrific career. But they are not traditional deputies the way Andy Robertson has Samikas. The drop-off just isn't that great if you switch the left backs. It's a completely different story on the right side. That's the other reason Alexander-Arnold makes it easily. Then we go into the midfield. Yes, Kevin De Bruyne is also here. I will continue to argue Kevin De Bruyne is underappreciated. He is more important than you think, even though he plays for Manchester City. And it also helps his case that 8 of his 15 goals came from the beginning of March to the end of the season. He scored 4 in one game. 3 of the other ones came against Liverpool and Manchester United. He delivered in the biggest way when his team needed him the most. They don't win that title without his performance at the end. The way they just continue to keep the pressure up and never let Liverpool get a foothold, really. Aside from that one slip-up against West Ham, right? They got the draw when they played Liverpool. And the numbers by themselves justify a spot on this team. There's also the part of this that he is the guy that makes the Pep engine run. And when you win the league, again, you're one of the best teams in the league has ever seen. Yeah, you're going to make it. Bottom line. Joining him, Mason Mount. Not good season for Chelsea. Arguably disastrous. I wouldn't go quite that far, but certainly you don't come out feeling really good and like there's a bunch of rays of sunshine headed toward that club. Now, the sale helps with that, but from a squad standpoint. And then Mason Mount doubles his production, essentially, from 2 seasons ago now. He was an absolute bright spot on a team that had very, very few. I would argue maybe they had, I guess you could say 3. Mendy, certainly Antonio Rudiger, and Mount. He was their best offensive player. Full stop. And he played more than any of the other attacking players because he was the one guy that was undroppable and Tuchel just knew he could trust him. And he delivered. He was the most productive player on this team. He is one of 3 players that reached double digits in both goals and assists. The other 2 are on this list, on this team. Didn't have to think too hard about this one either. When you finish third in the league, you should be represented somehow, and Mount was easily the most deserving candidate, the easiest one to fit in. Holding midfielder Calvin Phillips. I have been on this since his first season in the Premier League. The only explanation for people who are taken aback by this is you don't watch Leeds play or don't watch them very often. This is something I could do without the numbers, but then you go look at the numbers, and the numbers prove an even more staggering point and make his inclusion even more justifiable. He played 20 games this year. 5 wins, 6 losses, 9 draws. Yes, the Leeds team that almost got relegated. 5 wins, 6 losses, 9 draws. I believe it was 5 clean sheets as well. Leeds. Marcelo Bielsa leads. That is how important this guy is. Now, yes, he was not the only one hurt. So losing Patrick Bamford certainly had something to do with their struggles as well. They were rolling guys in and out all season. Their defense had more or less collapsed by the end with all the suspensions and injuries. But he is, in many ways, he and the next guy are the faces of this team. Again, this is not based on accomplishments this season. This is all important. And you can prove you are important by not playing. It is not a coincidence to me that Leeds struggled this mightily after doing so well last season when Phillips was unavailable for essentially half the year. He is sensational at what he does. There's a reason he is now a constant figure in the English national team. There's a reason he's always going to be linked to moves to bigger clubs. He is every bit that good and every bit that important. I already hinted about this guy and said he was going to be on this team. And so here's Jared Bowen. Another one of those guys that reached double digits, 12 goals, 10 assists, 5th in total goal contributions in the Premier League this season. And again, it's not just the numbers, it's what he meant to this team. This team was trying to get to the Europa League final, ultimately came up a little bit short, while also staying right in the thick of the top 6 race the entire season. Had they won their last game, they would have been 6th with a tiny squad. And Michail Antonio did his 10-goal thing. Thomas Souček was nowhere near as productive from a goal-scoring standpoint, so somebody had to make up the slack if they were going to keep pushing to be that next team outside the top 6. Enter Jared Bowen. He was absolutely spectacular. They don't come close to sustaining their pressure on both fronts the way they did without him. Again, did he have one of the 3 best attacking seasons in the league? No, probably not. But was he one of the 3 most important attackers? You betcha. Yeah, the Golden Boot winner who doesn't take penalties, he's going to get included on the list, especially when his team finishes 4th. He had 5 more goals from outside the penalty spot, if you will, than any other player in the Premier League. Yes, Son shared the Golden Boot with Mo Salah, but Mo Salah is the penalty taker. Imagine what Son's numbers would have been if Harry Kane wasn't his teammate or Harry Kane wasn't so good at taking penalties. He was absolutely spectacular. And this spot was going to go to him or Kane. There wasn't room for both of them. And there is part of me that wanted to put Kane here because of his link-up play and the stuff he does outside of the numbers. But then you think back to the beginning of the season and the the very shaky start, the drama with the Manchester City thing. He didn't get going for a while. And meanwhile, Son is as good as any attacking player in the Premier League. So the more I thought about it, the more I thought this isn't a discussion. He was that valuable. It's not like Kane's assist numbers were way better than Son's. Son's did plenty of helping other players too. And he was just sensational. So, he was so good, and that team needed those goals so badly at some points that there was no way he was going to lose the spot. And then finally, yes, Mo Salah, surprise, surprise. I mean, he and, speaking of Harry Kane, are now the only two players, unless I got my going back and forth between goals and assists wrong, only two players to lead the Premier League in both in a single season this millennium. And the thing with Salah has always been he just doesn't do a lot assist-wise. He doesn't do a lot for his teammates. You know, he's very much sort of single-minded, terrific player. Just has a tendency to sort of get focused on shooting and doing it himself. He led the Premier League in assists. He pulled out, and I feel like the longer Salah has gone, the more unfair that characterization has become. Because this is not the first year he's had good assist numbers. And of course, it helps his team score so many goals, and he's got so many great players around him. But if you would have told me that Salah would have been the one to do it after Harry Kane, would not have believed you. And of course, Liverpool were terrific. He also tied for the Golden Boot. He's a top 3 player in the world. So yeah, Mo Salah is going to be on the team.